and welcome to the F Money Show. I am your host, Fran Chismar. One of the last concerts that I got to see before the pandemic hit was the Three Dimensional Tour. This was a tour that boasted 3 headlining bands, the Mowgli's, Plain White Keys, and New Politics. And on each stop of the tour, the bands would rotate who the headliner would be. So when they visited the TLA in Philadelphia back in December, New Politics was the headliner. I was fortunate enough to be able to speak with Soren, David, and Lewis backstage before the show, and we had an incredible conversation. And I'm very happy to be able to share that with you today. So without further ado, please enjoy my interview with New Politics. Welcome back to the F Money Show on i99radio.com. I am your host, Fran Chismar. I am incredibly excited to have guests with me tonight. Please welcome David, Soren, and Lewis from New Politics. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. What's up?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining me. I know you're busy. I really appreciate taking time out of your schedule to talk to me tonight. So I want to say I'm loving the new album. Absolutely. I've been listening to it a lot, actually. And I kind of feel as though each of your releases takes on a different sound. I kind of feel like each one moves in a little bit of a different direction. And that's no different with An Invitation to an Alternate Reality, which I feel has more of an electronic dance feel to it. But is this something that's planned? Like, do you go into each album looking for a little bit of a different feel, or is that just like a happy accident, or is that just me?
I think that's always like a challenge for us, because you release a record, then you get used to the sound, you get used to that universe, you go on the road, then it takes a life of its own as well, and then you start to compare yourself to that with your former records and what you have to do, like you're inspired to write new stuff. And I think in the process of writing, stuff just happens on its own, that you don't have any control of. And there's a certain, like, you'll stumble upon a few songs where you kind of stop thinking and you start just creating in the moment. And I think that builds sort of the foundation of what the songs and what the new universe, which we don't even know what it is until we're listening to a done record, I guess. But like there'll be a couple of songs I feel where you go like, this is it. Like, okay. It gives you an answer of some sort.
So when are you writing, does any of the next album take place on the road? Do you get back and then approach writing and it kind of takes form that way? Like, are any of the songs being played live before that album?
We've never really tried that. We don't really have a method, right?
Yeah, I think it's we wrote a lot of our third record,
okay.
Vikings. We wrote a lot of that on the road, and we were also in a little bit of a different position because we were doing a tour, supporting 2 big bands. So overall, it was between 3 and 4 shows a week,
okay.
And our crew wasn't that big, so we had a whole bus where we could pretty much dedicate the back lounge to working on music, okay. Where I think whenever you headline, you are on a tour where you're like this one, we were part of the, with three bands alternating,
yeah.
That it gets a little more tricky because the days are longer and you have less time. Instead of, you don't show up with lights and this and that, where as a support band you just show up and you play your set and then pretty much you have the rest of the time off. So it was a little easier. Another thing is also that we
also weren't sharing a bus.
Yeah,
okay.
and we have a track system, that we have had since the beginning, and that requires you kind of have to write the song first.
Okay.
So we've always done it like that. I think like we worked in the studio, and then afterwards we would go, start playing them live.
Okay, so it's a little bit easier to be creative when you're off the road a little bit and have time to.
Yeah, I think you start to get like an itch, I think.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
First, it starts with an itch. You're
okay.
like at home, you take a break, and you're like, I can't do this no more. And then
that's the motivation.
2 hours pass, and then you're like, I'm craving something.
It's David and Soren. It's my band.
It's funny because we feel that we haven't done a lot this year, but I realize we have done 3 tours. So I think most bands feel like that. Yeah, whenever you come home from a tour, you're like, oh, I'm so excited to be home, and after about 3 weeks, you're like, when do we tour?
Well, it's funny because it seems to me that you're always on the road, that there's always something going on. So it at least it doesn't feel to me as a consumer that you're taking a lot of time off. It seems like you're constantly busy. I saw you here a year ago.
Down, but we had like a couple. We had like a year ago. We did something. We had a small, like a 6-day run in the summer. Then we're doing this, and then I think the 2 years before that we did like 1 or 2 tours a year.
Okay.
But it was, I mean, there was a period that, like, A Bad Girl in Harlem and Vikings, I think we were on the road, like...
300 days?
300 days for
Wow.
3 years,
That's
back
crazy.
to back.
That's
Like, if you
crazy.
compare it to that time to now.
We slow down.
You slow down.
Well,
We
that's why it
definitely-
feels like to us that we've obviously, like, slowed down a lot compared to that, because...
Yeah, but we make sure to go at least once a
At
year
least
on tour.
once or twice, yeah.
Once or twice,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. I had read that part of the theme on Lost in Translation was the band dealing with increased success as the band goes on. What's the theme on the new album?
David, that's a you question.
I don't know.
Or
I
is
think,
there a theme? Is there?
I think there is. It makes every day you kind of the answers become more clear. I feel that it really reflects it really reflects us as a band, what we've gone through in the last 2-3 years, and a statement of sort of a very important statement of, like, from a song like Unstoppable.
Yeah.
Because those are a lot of things that we also went through as a band, because we decided to go independent with this record, do it independently.
I actually was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so there were so many things that involved that. We all used to live in Brooklyn, New York. We all moved. We all live separately now. So
Okay.
it added so many new challenges. And all about at the same time, all these changes came. Me becoming a first-time father.
Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah. And us, not taking up the option on our deals, and stuff like that, and kind of have almost like giving ourselves a new slate. Because, I mean, we've been going for 10 years almost, or 9 at this time, or 8, or whatever it was. So I think all of this change happening, it all kind of, the signs kind of just led to this. And there was a period where we were alone, just the 3 of us, like with no management, no booking, no this, and it was a scary time. We were kind of faced with a lot of questions, a lot of, doubt, a lot of, not doubt in wanting to do this, but like what the next step is, trying to find answers.
Because the lyrics definitely felt deeper, like more reflective, even though it's set against a backdrop of very upbeat music.
Yeah.
I think, to me, compared to your previous releases, it was a much deeper subject matter.
Yeah, I think this record we've really tapped into something expressive, maybe more than melodic. Not that it's not melodic, but like I think there's a very expressive sort of feel to this, and I think that happened naturally. I think we kind of we spoke a lot, and we were going back and forth, and we were trying to figure out stuff, and like it was just probably some of the hardest times in the bands, because being signed, like the first 4 records or 3 records especially, I feel that we had something that was just in motion, that there was like a consistency, and it was very easy. You kind of just threw it in, and the machine kind of figured it out, and it was all sort of comfortable in a sense. But now just being alone with our own devices and just the 3 of us, it really like brought back the sense of why we're doing this and what we're doing, what we're doing it for, and our love for it. Like it went back to it brought us kind of back to the roots of things, without losing anything, And I feel that I think like once we started going into the studio, we started writing a couple of songs like Suspension, Ozone, Unstoppable, and I think once we heard those, there was sort of like a foundation of sort of the record, in a sense. Or we were like, I think we have something here, and we didn't overthink it too much. I think we just went in the studio. It was actually a really fast process with John Feldman, but super creative and like high energy and just like in the moment, capturing the moments.
And that's what I was going to ask. Do you feel that the label switch allowed you to be more creative this time around?
In a sense, I mean, you're always creative, you know, like there's always pros and cons to anything, but that also reflects the situation you're in at the time. And I think for the time that we're in now today, and with what we've gone through, our experience and stuff, I think this really reflects perfectly our situation and our statement to, you know, just going back to the core, like, of what we do and why we do it. You know, not that we ever did it wrong before, but just like, you know, like just getting that. And I think we've also really tuned into like a really important thing that we never really discussed as a band, and like, what is our genre of music? Like, what is our style of music?
I don't even know if I could fit you in a
and that's
genre.
one thing that we always struggle with, because we don't really have a pre-consumption of what our music has to be, or what if something is right and touches correctly, you know, then it's good enough. I mean, that's the art of it, you know, in a sense.
Do you think that's harder for you for radio airplay? Like,
yeah, in a sense.
I also, it's tricky because radio is, you know, we've seen all the amazing things that radio can do for you, but radio usually I think a lot of bands can relate to this. Radio is, a lot of times it is also that the label commits to having all their reps go out and talk to people, and you know, us as a band, we go out and we meet a bunch of people, and luckily we know a lot of people now, but we kind of made a little bit of a we made a different type of decision here since we went with an indie label, that, you know, all the people that are working this label, they have amazing connections, and they have all been doing, you know, all the big business for a long time, so they're super competent. But it is a different situation that when you go with a major label, there's a force 30 people in the office working radio, a huge budget, and then all the reps that are working for that specific label. So it's a different situation, and in a way it feels good for us to for the first time say, well, we don't necessarily want to go out and just do the same cycle we've been doing earlier, but at the same time we also see how important radio is for the community and for the bands to go out and play the festivals and these kind of things, and that doesn't necessarily happen unless you get that big label push. I'm sure a lot of bands can relate to this story, you know.
And I've had that talk with radio DJs too, and one of the things that led Ryan into starting I-99 Radio is that we felt that the bands that we loved, we would come to shows and they're sold out, and it's the listeners from these radio stations, but we don't hear those bands that we love on the radio station. You know, and obviously people want to hear them. They know about them. They're coming to the shows.
I mean, it's also business, you know, like, and a lot of that we're talking about is also business, and that, you know, that reflects on contracts and stuff. So that's like the other side of the industry, which, you know, clashes with art, but art can't exist without business. So you have to find that common ground. And I think that has a lot to do with, you know, the three of us, you know, going back to our roots and figuring out what's important for us, and as you know, like as a band, and the fans that we have, and where can we take it from here. This is almost like this record is like a new chapter, and me saying that again without losing anything of the past or any, you know, we're still playing our songs, and, you know, we're still the same. It's just, I think going through the bumps that we did, or these changes and stuff, I think this record, you know, kind of, I think that our style of music is hopefulness. You know, it's like life is really tough. There's a lot of struggles, and I think all of us, you know, have gone through our personal and as a group, and, you know, we've gone through the ups and downs. We've been around for long enough to really know that like consistency, persistence, and passion are like the key to art, I mean, in general. And I feel that like that's what we really tapped into on this record. And looking back at like the other 4 records, when I listened to the other 4 records after this record came out, it's like our music's, I would call our music expressive and hopeful.
I agree.
You know, it's like a hopeful expressiveness, because we understand the struggle.
And I think it's continually evolving, and I think any artist would say their goal is to keep evolving. You know,
absolutely.
Everyone loved the Major Tom version of David Bowie, but if he would have stayed that, you would have missed out on all the other stages.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Then he wouldn't have done Hero.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you
Or-
want to evolve, you want to grow. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just putting out the same thing.
You have to, and you're
over
not
over.
the same.
And
We're
it's-
not the same we are today that we were when we wrote A Bad Girl in Harlem or our first record, or that's always changing and evolving. And I think you have to tune in and be in touch with that when you write and stuff.
It's terrifying too. I think being a solo artist or being a painter or any type of artist that's not necessarily even a musician, where you're doing it yourself, is really hard because you don't have your buddies in a band to rely on and to sometimes tell you no. I think that's super, super important.
Do you think the three of you living together, as long as you did in New York, helped you through some of those hard times to get where you're at today?
I mean,
Absolutely.
literally, I think it helped us through it in ways that we couldn't afford to, back then. But we also like, I don't think that there's any doubt. We all got lucky. We got lucky.
You have to be
We
a close
worked
unit
really,
as well.
really hard for it, but we also got lucky. I think a lot of people saw the potential in the band, but at the same time, there's also an element of luck that goes into this, and it's a little bit like anything else in life, that the more you do something, the more you want it, the more chances, the more lottery tickets you're gonna get.
You got to be
literally,
in it,
you know.
That's a great way to put it.
Got to
Yeah.
be in it to win it, and it sums it up.
Because
Right?
there's a lot of talented people
Yeah.
that don't make it anywhere, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of lazy talented people.
There is a
and-
lot of lazy, talented people.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of people that work really, really hard, and if you
Aren't that talented, but are,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
and become super successful.
I mean, I don't consider myself, crazy talented or anything, but it's one of those things that I've always put a lot of effort into anything that I've done, and I know it's the same for the two other guys. And I think because of that,
100%.
Lewis is shaking his head because he is
Lewis
obviously
like,
way
"No,
more
I am
talented.
talented."
No, but that's a thing. I think we were always good at writing songs. Like, we took that aspect of it seriously. But then you have to add a whole different thing that came. Sometimes hardship is good because hardship gives you incentive to work.
Yeah.
To work really hard for something to get out of the hardship. One of them being that since David and I, we grew up, even though David's dad is American, we grew up in a country where the first English you're ever gonna hear is on TV or in songs, and you have no clue what it means.
Okay.
So as you're growing up and you start to understand lyrics, that's a big thing. That's why you have a lot of Swedish writers that are very good with melodies, and then ally themselves with American or British lyricists. And in our case, we come over here and our songs, I think, were really fun and interesting.
Yeah.
But lyrically, I think it took us a little time to realize that, well, we actually, like, how do we express this? Because it's such a different world, and lyrics are just as important as the melody is. So for us, that was hardship, something that we really still, I think, are fighting to overcome. But how awesome is that? Because it allows you to. It gives you a nice feeling when you manage to say something that touches other people, even if even though we might have to work a little harder for it.
I think it kind of affords you a relatability, because I'm sure as you get successful, it's harder to become relatable because it's a different set of challenges. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like a rooted challenge.
Yeah, we've discussed that many times as well. We've even had discussions like, maybe we should just start a whole new band and call it something else, We've gone through, I don't think there's something we haven't spoken about, as a band.
Yeah.
And that's just honest. And if you can't be honest and raw from, with who you are and what you go through in life, it's like you're not gonna move anything forward. It's part of that. And I think us being able to do that and us living together as long as we have and have gone through what we've gone through has also,
and still have those conversations.
yeah, and we've also gained that respect for each other underneath everything, and a certain loyalty and trust, that is that makes it also worth it. It's
Yeah.
like there's a brotherly type of bond there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just super excited for this new record, and it was sort of a way for us to that's why with the cover and stuff, to a place for someone either to escape or have a platform to speak or relate to their voice. You know, like that's what this record is sort of about.
You know, which is especially with the dawn of social media, you definitely, I think more people are apt to say that they don't have a voice or they need a voice or they're struggling. So it's definitely, you can see the audience you're talking to, I think, even now that maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago was more of a harder thing to discuss.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think that's I mean, that's a beautiful thing. You know, I think art has always had this incredible power to unite people, and also not just to you somehow create a bond between the artist and them, but also unite people that feel a certain way. And I think there's a very specific time of American music and American art that really somehow was able to do a lot of that, you know, and we have been lucky, and maybe it's also because of, you know, of how we do write and how we do say things, but we have been a part of that, and we are a part of that, and I find that extremely, you know, like how can we not be proud of that?
I think when you touch someone, they're more loyal. When, you know, they follow you, they almost feel like they're a part of you. When you speak to them, it's like they know you. So I think,
and they're part of us.
Yeah,
you know, they really are.
So you mentioned David Feldman earlier.
John
Feldman produced it. Did he produce the entire?
Yeah, that was another thing we did with this record. As opposed to,
because the last album was more of a group effort. You had multiple.
Yeah, we've done. I think on all our first record was Dave Sardi, more or less. He oversaw.
He only did 4 songs, and then it was John Kaplan, Oliver Strauss that produced the other 6, and then Dave Sardi mixed the record.
And he mixed it. That's right. That's what it was.
And so I noticed you had one producer for this one.
This that give you more? Time we actually did that.
Did that give you more continuity? Do you feel to the feel of the album?
Totally.
Definitely.
I think like listening, like what you can do with this record, what you could do that with, I think, any record.
Yeah.
You know, not even ours, but like you don't have to have one producer. But I really feel for the first time you could put on this record from front to back, and it also gave an outlet of more creativity beyond the music.
Okay.
Because it was so consistent, and you could put the records together and put these small interludes and poems and stuff between some of the songs, and kind of pack it all together, and it was still the same. It's still like it all made sense.
It's one piece.
Yeah, and it's like a fast record that goes. I mean, it's what 26 minutes.
Yeah, it's
or
quick.
Something. Yeah,
it's quick.
9 tracks, and it's like it's a fast record, but it's like I think it really upholds the message, you know, about like a means to escape or create like your universe. You know, like gives a platform for the listener to voice or relate to something. And I feel that in this day and age, with all the contrast going on and all like the indifference between people and sensitivity, and you know, everyone having an opinion and having an outlet to voice it, causes a lot of eruptions and chaos in a sense, and it also adds a very fragile state to us as people. And I think that people need to, like, what I'm trying to do is look beyond that, because the person coming with an opposite opinion or coming with something else is doing it from a relatable place, and I believe that there's a sense of love behind all of it, and caring, and maybe like, you know what is best for yourself type of thing, but you also need others to relate to you and agree, you know. And I feel that that's what this record kind of boils down to, you know.
I felt this was more of a package. Like, I loved Lost in Translation as a whole, but I could pick out which the Butch Walker produced songs were. You know,
of course,
like you know, you could hear those different feels, and this one felt like one consistent.
Yeah.
Not saying the other albums weren't consistent, but there was definitely a different. I walked away from this one a little differently.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's super cool.
We also wanted to do that. You know, we were kind of at times a little afraid because we were really pushing the envelope and pushing John Feldman as well, because, you know, we also wanted him out of his comfort zone in a sense, not in a forceful way, but in a way where you're not thinking.
Okay.
So that like you're out of your comfort zone in a natural way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, we're going to force being out of this, you know. It has to come naturally, of course. And that's sort of the challenge. And once you start hitting that sort of area on the gold mine, or
Which is-
whatever the right expression
Yeah,
is.
I mean, because he's an accomplished producer.
Oh
in his
my
own
God.
Right? You know,
Insane,
And
yeah.
So, do you think this was a challenge for him working with
Yeah,
you on this
absolutely.
one? Okay.
Yeah, I think it matched. Like, he was such a big part of the record, and I think he was in a similar place to us, like a relatable place in what we're talking about. I mean, he's been there for so long, and he's a legend in his own sense, but he also feels he has so much more to give, and he does. And you know, he has so many other sides to show. And I think this project, you know, also pushed him as well. I know we were pushing each other like crazy, you know, and like in a super fun way, just like ecstatic, like, oh my God, this sounds fucking incredible, you know.
It's when I listened to it for the first time, I kind of took the headphones off and just kind of smiled. Like, it was, I don't know how else to express it. Like, it was just like, yeah, all right, I'm really digging this. I like
That's
it.
awesome, man.
That's awesome.
And it wasn't what I expected. That's
Yeah.
not what I expected to hear when I put it on.
And we loved that, and we were also like looking forward to that,
Yeah.
like with our fans
That
and
exact
stuff.
reaction.
But the response has been amazing,
Wonderful.
you know, just mind blowing.
So, and before I forget, congratulations on 10 years as a band. You just celebrated
you.
that
Thank you,
recently,
thank
right? So, for you, 10 years of your physical stage act starting to take a toll on you at all, or like are there some shows after the flips and the headstands that you're like,
Actually,
I actually
no.
don't think so.
No?
No.
I
You
know
still
that
don't?
sounds.
It gets a little hard, like, to get into the routine, because like my
Yeah.
routine's completely different at home. It's like
Okay.
I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm like sleeping by 9, and it's like, you know, so I don't get to do what I used to do. Like, I don't have as much free time, barely
especially
any.
with a child.
Yeah,
you
so
know.
like you have to schedule things a little more. Like, I want to be in the studio at least once a week, you know, to get like some kind of creative outlet. And you know, and then I have to learn to switch on and off a little bit. Like, when I'm in the studio, just you're in the studio, just let that go as
Yeah.
it goes. If something happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, don't force to control anything. Just have fun with it. And then spending time with my daughter is like a whole different thing. And then I also, of course, you know, my wife we have to keep our, you know, thing. You know, that's
it's challenging,
Yeah, that's
especially when
another
you
challenge.
add kids to the mix.
Yeah,
and you
you
have
add-
a
exactly.
career where you travel.
Yeah,
a
and then
lot,
with
so.
our traveling, and she films, you know, she's filming part-time, so it's like we juggle everything, but it's taken us about 2 years to kind of get like a hang of it. I've learned so much, you know. I'm still trying to, you know, I'll always have some of those man type of, you know, Neanderthal, like, you know, up
We all
in
do.
effect, of
We all
course.
do.
But I'm learning a lot also from her and the experience and stuff, and it's hard, you know, like when we first started rehearsing in Nashville and stuff, it was just really hard because, you know, Soren and Lewis is still like, no, let's work from like 8 to 3 a.m. You know, I'm over exaggerating now, but like, it's just a whole, and I'm just like, in my head, I'm just like, oh my God, my eyes are going to be at my knees. And it's like, I have to force myself. And then, like, you know, I get fatigued in a different way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
like my vocals also, you know, I have to adapt. Like, I have to get into sort of a routine, and it's like I'm starting to feel it really come now that we've been on the road for like 3 weeks.
I mean, I think that's definitely, I can definitely relate to that side of it. But at the same time, the only thing that I noticed definitely is that I think I go to bed earlier
Okay.
than I used to.
All right.
Other than that, I don't think there's not a lot of. Once we get up on stage, it doesn't matter, because I remember there was a very specific show not too long ago when we were all sitting like this, like, I don't know how I'm gonna get up there and play. And as soon as you're up there, it's just like,
'Cause
okay,
your
it's
show,
fine.
you know, for anyone that hasn't seen you live, your show is very energetic, like extremely energetic.
That
so-
we haven't lost.
No,
Yeah.
we switched it all up. We're
Okay.
all sitting down.
I'm playing a flute now, and all the versions of the new record are in flute.
Oh, that's awesome.
You're like, that's awesome. No, we're pretty energetic, yeah.
No
It's good.
headstands to that. You know.
I mean,
now
it-
if you could do that while spinning
While
in your
being
head,
on the
He
flute,
can.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
really weird. I think it's something we were joking about it, you know, not too long ago during this tour. We were joking about how the first show that we ever played was, we were not very experienced. Like, David hadn't really been a singer in a band before,
Okay.
and
All right.
I hadn't really at all been a guitarist in a band. So it was one of those things where I think we were trying to compensate for the fact that we
Oh,
were like,
okay.
we're
Yeah.
gonna make this awesome for everybody,
Yeah.
because God knows if they start listening to us, they're not gonna like what they're hearing. And then it just turns out, I think that maybe one of the reasons for why we all got along was that we had the same type of energy, which is a little insane.
You all seem like natural performers, high energy performers. So
Thanks. We definitely take pride.
When
in
it's
it.
on, it's on. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So I think I need to wrap this up for you guys. I think thank you for taking so much of letting me take
all
so much of
good.
your
Lewis,
time.
sorry, Lewis was talking so much.
I
You-
know.
I'm sorry.
He always does.
I had to
Still
turn
trying
his
to wake
mic
up.
off because it was just blah blah blah.
At some point, this gets
Well, I can't
slowly
get a-
faded,
I mean,
like
you,
auto
You
fade.
guys just can't get a word in edgewise, which are two
Okay,
Danes.
say what you. Let's hear what you really have to say.
I play drums.
Don't you forget that. Me, Jane. Boom, boom. Crash, crash.
That's all you need to know. That's it. That's
No,
it.
sorry, Lewis.
No,
we
it's okay.
sometimes
Come on.
just
So-
talk a lot.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining me. Make sure you pick up a copy of New Politics' new offering, An Invitation to an Alternate Reality, anywhere you buy music. You can also stream An Invitation to an Alternate Reality on Spotify or Apple Music. Make sure you see them live in a city near you. And thank you again, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Thank you.
much.
Anytime. And I will see everyone when the needle drops.
Here we go. You're listening to the F Money Show with your host, Fran Chismar. Come on. Right here on i99radio.com.